This is the Visual Developers Podcast with your hosts, Lacey Kessler, Matt Varghese, and Ben Parker. Interviews, no-code reviews, tutorials, and more, we're here to talk about all things no-code.
Hey everybody, Ben here with Visual Dev FM, back with another episode. And I'm joined as always by my co-hosts, Lacey and Matt.
Heyo.
Heyo.
Whatever.
Lacey,
we have guests today. We can't bicker.
I know, you need to behave. I'll call your mother.
All right, whatever.
It's like mom and dad are in the car today, and so you have to be good, you know. It's wonderful. No, so if you're listening, welcome. We're so excited to have you. This episode's going to be a little bit different because this is the start of our 2 episodes a week. We're rolling them out, interviews and no-code roundups. And we're so excited this week to have with us Nick and Hannah from Squarekicker. And we talked about Squarekicker in a previous episode, and it's just such a really great tool. It's a tool that's built to work on top of Squarespace. So for those folks who are building Squarespace sites and building with Squarespace, it really takes your sites to the next level. It gives you all of this power. I mean, some of the features, it gives you these fine-tuned controls for the Squarespace blocks. You know, and they have a lot of pieces for, you know, like text, images, sections, all those other things. But they also have what they call presets, which are, think of them as components, which is really awesome. You know, tools for you to build in sticky sections and light boxes. It's horizontal scrolling. It's beautiful. It really is the power that it gives you. And their annual plans start as low as $12 a month, go all the way up to about $69 a month. And just when we talked about it on the podcast not long ago, we talked about how much we loved it and the kind of the power it gives people. And so, you know, today we're excited to talk a little Squarespace and to talk to Nick and Hannah. So Nick and Hannah, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, we're glad you're here. Well, let's dive in. We want to learn a little bit about you. I know that you both were creating for the web as web developers before you created this tool. You know, tell us about your background. How did you get into tech?
Yeah, well, that kind of starts with a little bit with me. I've kind of dragged Hannah into this crazy idea. But personally for me, I mean, I can think as early as kind of 10, 11, 12 years old, I kind of was playing video games and playing a lot of different things. I thought, man, I want to make video games for a living. That sounds awesome. I like computers. I'll get into it. And I really wanted a job someday to go work at DreamWorks and make games and make movies and that kind of stuff. And so I went to Barnes & Noble. I'm not even sure if Barnes & Noble is a thing anymore, but I went to Barnes & Noble and picked up a programming book and thought, yeah, I'm gonna program and learn how to code, and took a look at it. Thought, nope, not what I imagined, not the glamour job I expected. So put that to bed and kind of thought, I don't want to be stuck in a cave coding anyways. So I want to be out talking with people. So I got into youth work personally. So I spent most of my career, my life in youth work, and during that time, you're always trying to engage young people to figure out how to engage them. So I got into graphic design to make flyers and posters and logos and making videos and making websites and interactive things online. So I kind of started self-taught the way through that. And then pretty soon I just kind of got more and more into these ideas, but always felt I was limited with the tools I had to create the things I wanted to. And so a friend of mine who was a web developer just said, look, you're wasting your time trying to handle all these no-code tools. Just learn how to code and give up trying to bet you that barrier. So you're always going to be beating your head against the wall with something. So I said, oh, yeah, fine, fair enough. And so I signed up to Code Academy, I think it was, and smashed out a couple HTML, CSS, JavaScript courses. And I was away, and I thought, oh, okay, I'll make a few websites now. And so I started asking some friends and family to make some websites. And then before I knew it, I had a pretty decent portfolio. So I thought, oh, okay, I could probably do this. And so I just kind of resigned from my youth work job that I've done for 15 or 16 years and started making websites for a living. And that kind of launched me into the tech world. And I guess the rest is history as far as how that led into Squarekicker next.
Yeah, and my story is completely different. I'm a fashion designer by trade. So Squarekicker is my first foray into the web design world. Nick kind of came downstairs one day and he was like, I think this is going to be a thing. And so I was like, okay, here we go. We need to get on this. So anything kind of non-technical lands on my desk. I tend to do all of the behind the scenes paperwork stuff. So kind of in the tech, but not really.
She opens up the code inspector areas on websites now, can look at the code and see if it's using Squarekicker, or actually can see where certain lightboxes are in div. So she's come a long way.
Huge steps.
Yeah.
Love that.
I love it. I love it so much. So how did you find? So you you were in the no code world. You started coding, and then you kind of came back to building for other no coders. How first of all, I guess we talked a little bit about how you found no code, but what led to building this tool specifically? Like, what was it about Squarespace that you were like, hey, we've got to do this, and I'm just kind of curious how that came about.
Yeah, well, like a lot of web designers probably back in the day, you try everything, right? So you try Wix, WordPress. I didn't even know Webflow was around at the time. I think even it was probably just early days. Squarespace, Dreamweaver, anything I get my hands on, because I'm just getting dirty into everything. And everything just seemed to really weigh me down as far as what I wasn't able to do and what could not do. I mean, Dreamweaver, I thought, yep, this is it. This is the full power of code, this Adobe product, and the power of design. And it just failed, in my opinion, because I couldn't figure out how to get the things I want. It was quite clunky. The code was unreadable, so I couldn't even change it. So I thought, I'm out of here. I dabbled a lot in WordPress and thought, yep, this is the one. I don't have to learn how to code anymore. I can just dive into plugins. And then when things break, you're like, oh no, why is it broken? So I have to hire third-party developers who could write things for me to fix stuff. And I thought, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to be admin tech support. So I found Squarespace, and I thought, oh, I don't need to spin up a server. I don't need to worry about updates and back-end code. I can just design. And if I want to tweak, customize, do whatever I want, I got to the point where I could basically set myself up with a challenge. I could nearly design any website I wanted to on Squarespace if I knew how to code it. So I just kept learning faster and faster and faster on Squarespace. And it became such a niche thing for me because once you get intimate with the code, I mean, like seriously intimate to the point where the admin code is different from the front end code. I could probably write it by hand at this stage. Whereas I'm writing the same code over and over and over and over again that, oh, this is actually becoming faster and faster for me to use, to the point where I started saving those buckets of technical challenges that I figured out and reuse them on my next project. So I just ditched everything and just knuckled down on Squarespace, and I was able to produce websites like a quarter the speed. So I slowly got rid of all my WordPress sites and other various things I was working on. And then I started hearing from other designers who are web designers in the Squarespace world saying, oh, we design on Squarespace too, but our client wants this scrolly thing or this crazy menu that we can't do. Can you help us out? So sure enough, I'd code something up and sell it on. And then I go, I'm sure that this code will work on every website on Squarespace. Why am I restricting myself to just my local market? And so I started toying with the idea of giving people the options, because it's not that hard when you know how to code to actually code something. The really hard part is when you're making for a client is how do you hand off that website? How do you hand off those technical challenges and then somehow try to teach your client how to change the CSS if they wanted to, or how do you update something with the content? So always trying to think about ways to give a website to a client that didn't have any technical challenges. So if I created this crazy slideshow with dips and dives and scrolling animation, all I would say is, if you want this here, just add a tag to this section and boof, everything will happen. It's like, that's easy. I could do that. So that was kind of where I was thinking. And then I thought, okay, well, I'm sure there must be other people thinking this, right? So let's go have a look. And there was a whole bunch of people on the market writing code and putting it places. And then I started to think about, okay, this is great, but these designs are terrible. Like, obviously this was written by a coder because not a designer. And so I thought, how can we actually pull design into these complex things, not just technical, but beautiful designs? And you guys are laughing because maybe you've seen this before. Maybe there's a stereotype.
It's so true.
It's so true. Yeah, like this looks this looks terrible, but I guess it works functionally. But we'll roll with it. And so I started kind of thinking about, how do you give a designer the power? Because they're the ones who you want to be making the websites, not the coder. And that's always this friction all the time with design code. And how do you get them to talk? Because they're obviously left and right brain, and it's quite a challenging task. So how do you give a designer the same power as a coder? And that's kind of where this started going. So we actually created code snippets to start off with. Like, we'll just have all this crazy code, and they have to remember 3 words. Oh, and then 3 words plus a left. Oh, 3 words plus a color. 3 words. It just got really complex. We ditched that idea, and we just kept thinking further and further down. If only we had like a visual I didn't even know what we were looking for. What was it called? Apparently it was called no code. I had no idea at the time, but we were looking for a way to visually abstract all the things in code in a UI. And when they clicked on a button, it created a value, which created the code, and essentially wrote the same code that we would as a developer, but we got the designer the power to create it. And that injected the same code that we as a developer would have wrote for Squarespace, but instead gave the designer that power. And so I guess me and another guy named Rowan, we were working together on the same project, and we were back and forth. And actually, this all kind of came down during lockdown, and all of our jobs went quiet. New Zealand went into like a quarantine for 2 or 3 months, was it? Yeah. And we couldn't go anywhere. We go to is get food and the doctor's office if you're lucky, and that was it. So we thought, let's not waste this time. Let's just go full steam at this idea. And about a month into it, after like Zoom calls galore, we just
I think it was about a week, to be honest.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we didn't sleep.
I was like homeschooling the kids downstairs, and I hear Nick and Rowan chatting, and they were getting more and more excited. And then Nick comes downstairs, and he's like, "This is going to work. This is it. Yeah. We've cracked the problem."
Yeah. So we had a proof of concept. Again, it was hideous, but we just needed something to work with. We didn't have a lot of time to design. We're just iterating, so we just threw something in there, and Rowan overnight. Actually, it was a long weekend. He's like, "No, I've got an idea." And he went rogue, he said, because he didn't approve any hours. He's like, I just got this idea and spent all weekend in his hammock coding away a storm. He says, Nick, I've got something to show you. Let's just see if this is a thing. And it just made my mind just open up. Like, if we can actually create a UI inside of Squarespace that allows you to write anything, then there's no limit to what we can create. And we just doubled down and thought we have to go for it. And so we, just took out a second mortgage and expanded some people on our team and just went nuts.
Wow. I love that. I love that level of conviction. Yeah, go for it.
Wait, you took out a second mortgage to do this. Are you for real?
We believed in it that much. We're like, nah, we had some equity in our house and we thought, you know what's this good for? We're young. We got lots of time to recover.
I love that.
Let's just go into it.
So great.
I love that.
That's
wonderful. I asked that because when I first found out about no code, I was in software engineering, and I told my husband I didn't want to code anymore, and he was like, sister friend, we've got a problem because you're for working and all sorts of stuff. So we rented out our front house and moved into our like tiny guest house. It shouldn't even be called a guest house. It was just like a bedroom and a toilet, but because we believed in it that much, so it could give us the flexibility for me to go all in on no code. So I just love you guys even more. That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Once you've got a good idea, and we're pretty sure this was a problem that was going to be solved for a lot of people, and it was fun. We thought, give it a shot. Right. What's it going to hurt? So we kind of thought, we'll give it a year and give it a crack and see where it goes.
It's been more than a full year, right?
Yeah, we're about coming up to the 2-year mark on that first kind of first weekend of us going, let's give it a go.
That's amazing.
I love it. From idea. Oh, go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to ask about so how did you market it from the beginning? Because I come from the Squarespace world, and literally, I don't know if you know of them. It's a site called Square Studio or something like that. Back in the day, I would just go buy plugins from there to do exactly what Squarekicker does today. And I wish I had Squarekicker back then when I was building for clients, because it seems like such a much more maintainable and easier solution for clients. So how did you market it to clients when you first got started? How did you find them?
I actually know of the same website as well, because I've visited a lot of those plugin places once I heard about it.
Yeah.
Well, people actually write code and sell it. That's interesting. Yeah. And it was interesting because I think there would be a button if you hover over a button, it swipes from left to right. And that's $5. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Oh, but this one over here, if you buy this one for $5, it goes from right to left. I'm like, hold on a second. That's the same code. You're selling them all individually. So I started looking at some, and actually was looking at writing a light box thing where you clicked on a video and it opened up, and it was taking me a while to kind of create. And I was like, I'll just buy it. That will get me someplace, right? And so I put it into a website and carried on. And then Squarespace changed something or whatever. It just broke, and I think something in their hosted file they stopped paying for, and it just went down. I was like, oh no, I got 3 websites using this. and I emailed customer support and didn't hear anything back. And I was like, fine, I'll fix it. And so I just went into like 3 or 4 websites and fixed them up. And I was like, I'm not doing that again. Like that was a terrible experience. But I guess during that process, we've been in the Squarespace game for quite a while, in the forums and the Squarespace things. And once we started having this idea, like I've just been, I probably had the idea for a good year before we had a chance to really work on it properly. And by this stage, I had bucket lists of all the things we could create that everyone was asking for. And so when we went kind of like getting it ready for an MVP, we just kind of reached out to a bunch of people that we saw, hey, like, we can't do this yet, but if you follow us, we'll let you know soon when this thing is live that you can do it without code. So I think we launched 5 months into building this project with about 100 people on our beta like list that signed up and wanted to check it out. So really quickly, a lot of more designers who were hungry. So we're like, oh, okay, this is a thing that not just we want, but it's a problem to be solved. And I think really quickly from the forums and the groups that we were in, we got a huge audience, people looking to see what we were doing, and really terrifying actually when people from Squarespace signed up to those beta users. We're like, people from Squarespace are checking this out too. Like we better have our A game now. Like let's go.
But the early days of marketing was just, like Nick said, literally just stalking people on Facebook forums and circles and being like, hey, we can fix your problem. Come check us out. And it felt a little bit awkward kind of being like, oh, look at us. But I think people were really responsive to it. And once we got those first users on board and they were starting to write blogs about it, and which was just mind blowing to us that people would love it enough that they would want to share it with other people. And from there, we've found it has grown quite organically. People are just really excited to share it.
Yeah. Truth be told, we actually got kicked out of some groups as well. That Square Studio we're running because we were their competition.
Oh, wow.
And the next thing you know, we got, we're real sorry. We didn't mean to. We were just trying to tell people about their problem and we could fix it, right? And then so people would jump in, I can fix it with this code plugin. You could buy my code plugin. Oh, Squarekicker fixes it. No, you guys are out. Like, oh, what? So it just, we got invited back in and then re-kicked out again. Like, okay, fine.
We're constantly.
That's how you know you're onto something.
Being like, writing all over the internet, like Squarekicker will fix all your problems.
That's right. You should just have a bunch of like alternative accounts or whatever. It's just Nick with like a full beard. Yeah, exactly, or something.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, of course, of course.
I love it. So I mean, you bring up talking about this makes me think about how much of an impact it brings to people who are making for the web, right? Because, Nick, one of the things you brought up is like, what's the difference even between Squarespace and a tool like Webflow? I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you see as differences for people who are looking to, like, maybe people listen to the podcast, they're trying to get their feet in the water, they're wanting to get started, building, being developers. I mean, what do you see as the key differences between a tool like Webflow and something like Squarespace?
You don't need a university. Sorry, low blow, Webflow. No, I think probably our main difference is our main difference is
I won't respond here.
Are you rolling your eyes? I can't see from here.
Sorry, Lacey. I think the main difference is probably who we're looking to serve. So we're really looking to serve those designers that don't have the technical ability. With something like Webflow, you still need to understand those basic web principles. They sit more on Nick's side of the desk than my side. And with Squarekicker, we wanted to be able to give designers the ability to create all of those things with kind of the power of a developer behind them. So I'd say that's kind of the main difference, is really where we're targeting the product.
Yeah, I mean, when I started hearing about Webflow, I didn't really know what they were, apart from another Squarespace designer said, oh, I'm starting to use Webflow, you should check it out. I'm like, I'm too busy even thinking about trying something else, but I'll look into it. But then once we started Squarekicker, I started looking at other things. Oh, look at that Webflow. How do they do stuff? And it kind of got me really interested and fascinated. So I started trying it out. I opened up a free template and I started going through it, and I was like, I don't know what is happening. Like, obviously the learning curve is quite high, and I think it's been described before as like, the Adobe products versus like Canva. Like, you can do way more powerful things, but at a cost, because it takes maybe longer, or the learning curve is higher. But once you get into that area, then the sky's the limit. You can literally do anything. So even as someone who knows like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, what is the difference between absolute and relative positioning, what's the difference between a padding and a margin, like all those things. I was even finding it difficult to figure out to do what I wanted it to actually do. And so I jumped in and thought, well, if I really invested my time and spent 13 hours of the, Webflow University, I could see a huge appeal with this. But the great thing about Squarespace, in fact, a lot of Squarespace designers have come back into Squarekicker. They said, oh, I've been frustrated with Squarespace because I can't do the things I want to do. So I've jumped out into Webflow, and obviously it's a lot slower, but I can do the things I finally want to do. And now I'm able to come back to Squarespace because I don't have to be restricted anymore with the things I can't do. So I guess whereas those really high level abstract CSS, HTML, JavaScript principles apply, you still have to know quite a bit about how to make a website, responsive design, etc., to use Webflow, whereas Squarespace, you don't have to really know anything. You point and click and make something. But if you want to go to that next level, we've actually changed the language to make it really simple, so you don't have to have any complicated courses or really heavy instructions or documentation. We even changed the padding and margin, depending what the user wants, to a word called spacing, because we think, well, that's what people want. They want to change the spacing. They don't care about the padding of the margin. If you want to make a horizontal scroll feature, I think I've watched the 20-minute tutorial on how to do it in Webflow, because you get the height times 3 times how many sections, and you change it to fixed and sticky and relative and timing. And you literally open up Squarekicker, you click on a section, you click on sticky or horizontal scrolling. How many sections do I want? 3, you're done. And it just works. So I guess those high-level performing features are going to get you to the same place that you wanted to get to, but a whole lot faster with just as much power. The downside is it takes us longer to make those tools because they're like a kit set of Lego that you have all the moving parts, compared to a bucket of Lego where you can build anything you want with no restrictions. So yeah, that's probably the main difference, I would say.
It does mean that, obviously with something like Webflow, since we're comparing the two, we make some assumptions with our tool. So we say, we think someone is going to want to use horizontal scrolling in this certain way. And so we make some assumptions and we build it towards that. And obviously you've got that bigger set of control with something like Webflow. So what we've kind of done is tried to make some of those assumptions so that the entry level for people to be able to use that tool is really, really minimal. And one of the kind of core values of our team is that our differences make us stronger. So we've got me who sits on the full fashion design side of the fence, all the way down to our dev guys, and we sit around, and every time we create a new tool, we pull out the whiteboard and we go, okay, if we had a button here, how would you interact with that? How would I interact with that? What assumptions would we bring to the table? And I think that's one of the things that's been really amazing with Squarekicker is we've been able to make something that someone that can code can use, and it can speed up their workflow, but also someone that has no understanding of code can come in and they can grasp those concepts and onboard themselves quite quickly into the tool.
Yeah, one of the main reasons people come to Squarespace is that there's limited options. It's really easy. It's not complicated. It's actually hard to make an ugly Squarespace website. Funny enough, now with Squarekicker, it's possible. So you can make some hideous things without trying.
Making Squarespace ugly again.
Yeah. So we've actually tried to jump into try to interpret what they're going to say. But the easy part is the code part. If we just gave them a list of every single thing you can do with CSS, there would be this huge abstraction that probably most people would never use. So we trim it down to thinking what's the most things that people are going to want to do. And we make websites, so we know what they are. And we try to add value there as opposed to giving them everything. So they may not want to have a polka dot top border and a pink double edge border and a shadow on the right, but not. There's some things they're not going to want to do. So how do we give them the things that most people are going to want to do? And I think we cover most of those bases.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference, between some of the tools, especially like you mentioned. I do think for a lot of folks who just want to get something stood up quickly, Squarespace is a great tool. So when we talk about visual development or no code democratizing the web, I think it's awesome to continue to give people more tools to create to create better sites. And so it's fun seeing what you all have built. So what did you learn from building Squarekicker? For me, I know anytime I build something, I learn just as much from the failures or the sticking points as much as all the successes too. So what came out of building this tool that gave you those aha moments where you were just oh, we didn't expect to learn this or to run into this. Just curious, like as someone who's building a tool, what can people listening learn from what you all learned?
I think the first thing we learned is that there was a huge hunger. I think we thought there was just a few designers out there who'd want to do this, and maybe most of them wouldn't be Squarespace users. But there was so many people that we actually ran into kind of a server that just got overloaded really quickly because we weren't prepared already. So we had to double down, rewrite our codes, take a whole sprint or two to make it more efficient, 10 times our speed, and then back out again. So that's been a really interesting learning curve. We just didn't expect it to take off so quickly. So many people actually are using this thing. I think like 10 to 20% kind of growth on users, and it just continues to grow at a rapid pace. So that's been really fun and exciting.
Yeah, and I think in that learning to be really kind of fluid with our development and with what we kind of come prepared to do each day. Like Nick said, you can come in and there's a user that's pumped Squarekicker onto 200 pages and all of a sudden things are falling apart. And so we take a day or two and put the pieces back together. And in that, allowing ourselves to take the time to make the product better in those moments and to go, okay, how are people using it now? What can we improve on? And I think kind of keeping that fluidity in our team and in our workflow has helped us to kind of put layers upon layers of the product and just continue to make it better.
Yeah. And then as much as we work with other web designers, so we often have a team meeting. I think there's about 7 of us at the moment, and we all kind of get together and we're like, all right, cool. So how should we make this tool? And so we kind of whiteboard out how it's going to work. And we really quickly realize that, not everyone thinks the same way as we do. So we actually realizing that people who design websites differently and people want different things in websites. So it's trying to account for all those use cases, not just the ones that I would personally use or how I would personally want it. So I would choose to go into this area of the menu first before into the next one. And no, I would choose to go to, the spacing before I got into the borders or something like that. So it ends up thinking everyone thinks so radically different. And what we end up resulting to is just, what does Squarespace do? Let's try to go down that track because that's our users. They're already used to that same method. So we try to match our menu and our systems similar so people aren't getting lost with such a huge contrast. It's so different from where they're already currently at.
And I think one of the big things kind of in both of those problems that we've kind of touched on is talking to our users and being really interactive with them. So we've tried to go over and above with our customer support. We put heaps of time into talking to people and, whenever they suggest a feature that they want to do, it's like, cool, tell us how you want to use it. Tell us where you want to use it. What are you missing? What are your clients after? And that's been hugely valuable to us, not only to kind of create a nice loop for us hearing what's going on, but also to improve the product.
Yep, and we learned about you guys. Didn't even know what no code was until we started. So, and we're hearing about all this new movement that's starting that we're part of. That we didn't even know that existed.
I'm sorry you've had to listen to our podcast so much, but we're grateful that you've listened.
You're great friends on our drive in and out every day.
I love it. Speaking of like your customers, one, I love the fact that it sounds like a very customer driven workflow, and so I love that approach because like those are the people that I mean, again, they're the ones paying for it at the end of the day, and so I love that they're the focus. Who is using Squarekicker the most? Is this like a Squarespace like prosumer, like that, like, I need a site for my own business and I want to take it to the next level? Are these agencies? Like, what's the main audience here that you've seen?
Yeah, we've got 2 main audiences. So the first one would be that more DIY user. So someone that's coming in, they're wanting to build a website for themselves, but they just want to push it a little past what Squarespace currently can do for them. So that was a lot of our early adopters were in that group.
And they're entrepreneurs, right? So they're creative. They want to make their own website. So they're trying to push the boundaries of what they could do with their website too.
Yeah, lots of photographers and people that are wanting that little bit of extra creativity. And then the second group, which was a little slower to start off with, and then now has just grown way beyond what we had imagined, is professional designers. So people that are using Squarespace to build sites for their clients. They've made their business on it, and now people are adopting Squarekicker at a huge rate, and they're pushing that out onto all of their kind of clients' websites. So that's been a massive growth group for us.
And even agencies have started to pick it up. So teams of 3, 4, 5 plus people are starting now to adopt it as part of their their kind of tool stack, if you will. So now they're getting graphic designers in-house to make websites for clients that are custom, but they don't need a developer's time to kit out some of these features. They can just get their graphic designer to do it, which is awesome. In fact, we're still making websites on the side because we're bootstrapping this business off the ground as much as we're loaning against our house. And also our graphic designer knows a little bit of code, having worked here, but she's less and less and less having to come back to us saying, oh, I need help with this code, because we'll just give it to you in Squarekicker form, and then you can make the thing you want without having to kind of keep pulling more developers off. So that's been really encouraging for us to see how that's helped our personal workflow, as well as the stories we hear back from other people.
Yeah, it's kind of wild for us to imagine that people are using this in their business every single day, but it's hugely encouraging. We love it. I think our real heartbeat is just to empower designers. I often think about it as just like bottling up our development team and putting it on someone's desktop. And that's a really awesome thing to be able to hand to those entrepreneurs that are making their own businesses, building websites for people, and being able to empower them that way. It's very cool.
I love that. I love that analogy. So have you heard from anyone at Squarespace about the tool? I mean, anytime you build on top of, like you're building tools on top of another tool, it's always it's always a fun relationship and a line you have to walk. And so I'm just curious, like, what have you heard from the tool from like Squarespace themselves? And then like, what's the one thing that's come out of this that you just didn't expect?
Yeah, I mean, we actually reached out to Squarespace really early on. So we were maybe like a month into kind of the concept of it and went, right, if we're going to build a tool based on their platform, we need to make sure that we develop a good relationship. And so we kind of emailed out, and someone was really generous to reach back, and we had a great chat with a person on their team. I can't remember which department they were in now.
Business development, something like that, partnership.
Yeah. And so we had a really great chat and just kind of was like, here's a little bit of what we're thinking. Is that something that you guys are going to build, and we're just going to end up wasting our time? It was a little tiptoe of like, we don't want to tell you too much, you don't want to tell us too much, but just kind of felt that out and started developing that relationship. And since then, Squarespace has been really generous to put us on a lot of calls with a lot of their different team members, and we've been able to kind of build that relationship. There's no official partnership, but Squarespace, if you're listening, we're here. But yeah, just kind of keeping that relationship really open and really kind of trying to build a good foundation with them.
Yeah, I'm always really encouraged when we have these chats with Squarespace, because they're a large company. They have how many staff, $10 billion valuation. Like they're definitely doing some cool things. And we get some of their senior designers coming on telling us like, look, you guys have done such a fantastic job. And, like the amount you've been able to help our users out. And, like I want some of these things as well. And so it was just really cool to kind of hear that positive feedback from them. Like it was quite surreal, really. And so we've had to, because we're so intimate with their website and their platform, like when they change something, like we know about it probably first than most people, because the admin side is not where most people play with, and that's where we're living all the time. So if anything happens or changes within 15 minutes, like that was there 10 minutes ago and now it's not, or that's moved, this is broken. So because we're on a piece of software that those changes that break that functionality, I think you mentioned on your previous shout out to Squarekicker, like for all the things that ought not be there, I think was the term that was used. That's fantastic. What happens if it breaks functionality was one of the things. And so we're constantly trying to stay ahead of the game, working with Squarespace. What are they developing? What's next for them? How are they doing stuff that we're not going to they're going to replace what we're doing. So we're always communicate with them what's happening, what we're going on. And they can't release everything, but they've been really helpful in kind of not coaching us, but just, sharing as much as they can along the way. Then if they do change or break or do something, that we can actually quickly roll out a patch or a fix, and that gets pushed out to everyone instantly. And most people, apart from us, didn't even notice what happened in the process.
I love to hear that you have that relationship with them. I mean, that's just really cool. And I hope for the folks listening, it just gives people more faith and confidence in the tool that you're building. So like talking about all of this, like you literally took a mortgage out on your home to like kind of get this thing started. You've built this awesome company and this tool that people love. If like, let's change the scenario, like instead of taking a mortgage out on your house, if like a VC came to you and handed you a blank check, tomorrow, what would you all build next? Like, do you have things that you're dreaming of that are still based around this, or is it your own tool? Would you still be focused on no code? I'm just curious after your journey, like where your minds are when you think about building.
Do you know a VC? Is that why this question's coming out? I was like, is there a connection happening here?
And we welcome into the call. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I mean, I think the easy answer would definitely still be a no code. We love what that brings to users. We love that we can be a part of empowering designers, like we've talked about, and also it would definitely be Squarekicker. You know, we've got years worth of development plans for what we can bring to the tool, and then also other pieces that we can put on it. Where you know, we have expanded our team pretty rapidly over the past couple of months. We're adding quite a few people on. Yeah, that's going on the mortgage as well. But so there's a lot that we're building, and you know, without giving too much away, we'll be continuing to work on Squarekicker as it is, and adding a ton more new tools in there, but also kind of working to add another piece into the Squarekicker family.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned earlier that, I mean, if you can code and you're creative at coding, you can pretty much build any design on Squarespace that you want. And obviously with Squarekicker, that limits a designer for what tools we give them to build those things. And so I think we're probably 1% of the way through for the things that we have on our stack that we'd like to integrate someday. So there is always that, and there will always be more to build, because if you could build any website on the planet with Squarespace and Squarekicker, what would that take? And so I think there's a lot of runway to get there. And I think it's not actually that hard if you have more people and more time. So we're just every time we get more customers, we're getting more people. So it's just that includes our space.
Right.
But some of the ambitious plans we kind of have in the near future is, I guess there's this gap right now, which I spoke to about. We have the DIY builder or the business owner who can't design and wants a better website, or that's different than every other website, and a designer who can build that website. And the gap really is, well, this person over here has to hire X designer to make their website, and that's a community, and that's an ecosystem. I guess adding another layer in that ecosystem so that the designer can deliver those kind of skills and the abilities to the end user, which is the client really, who has that website seamlessly and at scale. Because right now there is a huge roadblock of how fast, like me, a developer can write code, build a website. So how can we increase that scale? How can we increase that functionality? And so I think we're just kind of looking at increasing, adding to that ecosystem and that Squarespace community. So there's some really exciting things happening that I looking around, I don't think anyone is doing. So, you know, if you touch base in a year or so, we'll be able maybe to answer more of those questions, but it's really exciting times ahead.
I love hearing that. And you know, I asked the question because, you know, one of my favorite things to hear a lot is, like, how are people dreaming? Like, where are they at? And then also, welcome to Visual Dev FM, where we try to pull everybody's roadmap out into the public.
We can't let Square Studio know, though, about this roadmap. There's beef here. We got to protect it.
In the no-code world.
Of course.
You know, it's one of those things where I think everybody we bring on, they're always like, "Oh, that's a good question. We're not going to answer." And so, like, I get it, but we're always going to shoot our shot, and we're going to try. And we appreciate you all coming on and talking to us about Squarekicker. Appreciate what you're bringing to the no-code community. And for folks listening, link in the show notes, squarekicker.com. Go check it out. But Nick, Hannah, where can people find you online?
Yeah, we're across all the socials. So you can find Squarekicker on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And if you want to chat to Nick or I personally, we're both on LinkedIn. So we'd love to talk to anyone that's interested.
We'll put your LinkedIn profiles, links in the show notes for folks if you want to go connect, say hi. If you're listening and you're a Squarespace user and you're like, hey, if you could add one thing, I've got a thing, or what have you, totally. Want to go check this out, they I'm sure would love to connect. So thank you so much, Nick and Hannah, for coming on the show. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We're so grateful to have you all week in and week out and to talk about no code. So stick around early next week, another no code roundup, and we will be talking to you all very soon. See you later.
Deuce.
Thanks for listening to visualdev.fm. You can find us on your favorite social media platform at visualdevfm.